Scripture this morning is from Luke's Gospel, chapter 16. Reading from the New International Version. This is a teaching of Jesus, a parable. Hear the word of the Lord. Jesus told his disciples, "There was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and he asked him, 'What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you can no longer be manager here.' The manager said to himself, 'What shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses.' So he called in each one of his master's debtors. He asked the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' 800 gallons of olive oil,' he replied. The manager told him, 'Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 400. Then he asked the second, 'How much do you owe?' 1,000 bushels of wheat,' he replied. He told him, 'Take your bill and make it 800. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you've not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? No servant can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." May God bless the hearing and the living of this word. Money, wealth, property, riches, assets, whatever word you use or prefer, is pretty much a universal human preoccupation. How to gain it, how to invest it, how to spend it, having enough of it, whatever enough may mean, who has it, who doesn't, where it comes from, where it stays. All of us, from our earliest years of life, live in the presence or absence of money. And its relationship to your life and mine always has profound influence on who we are and how we live. To talk personally, I grew up, by no merit or virtue of my own, in a family of some financial means. 1950s, 60s, 70s, middle-class America, which in comparison to third world countries is very advantaged. I never went hungry. I always had proper clothing. I always had shelter, health care, dental care, security at home, and education. Each of my parents came from hardworking, middle-class families. Money had to be earned, then saved wisely, and spent frugally. Here's a true story that sums up my earliest relationship with money. I don't remember this incident. I was too young, but my grandparents told me quite often about it. This happened when I was about 5 or 6 years old. I was with my grandparents in a small shop, sold candy, souvenirs, stuff like that. I didn't have any money of my own, so my grandfather gave me a quarter to spend on anything I wanted to buy. And apparently I walked all around the store, picking up items, looking at them, looking at my quarter, putting the items back down on the shelf. After some time, it became clear to them that I was not going to give up that quarter. I wanted to save it. So seeing this, my grandfather gave me a second quarter. And he said, okay, you can save the first quarter. This quarter is for you to spend. I have no idea if I spent it or what I spent it on. But that pretty much sums up how I thought about money. I'm almost 62 years old, and I still struggle within myself over money questions. How much is enough? What to save? What to spend? What to invest? What to give away? What is the relationship of money to all the rest of my life? Money in all of its various forms is pretty much inescapable in this world. And so, since the Bible contains stories and teachings about this world, the Bible does address the topic of money. Today's scripture is the gospel lectionary reading for this Sunday. I would never have chosen it. It deals explicitly and directly with money. There's a unique biblical word in this story. The translation I read translated it worldly wealth. But the word is mammon. M-A-M-M-O-N. Mammon. Which in translation means money, or riches, or wealth, or worldly properties. The only character in the Bible who ever speaks the word mammon is Jesus. And from his lips, it always has a negative connotation. 3 times that word appears in this story, in this scripture. And it's usually translated out like worldly wealth or money. If you were listening and you found this story to be a little confusing, you're not alone. Christian scholars and teachers and pastors for centuries have struggled to understand the meaning of this parable. But let's first consider what is fairly straightforward about it. There are 2 main characters in the story. There's a rich man, and there is his manager or steward. It's typical of this time and place that a person of great wealth who has properties to rent out or money to loan doesn't deal directly with those who need it, but has a middleman, a manager, a broker, who manages all the financial deals that he has on his behalf. This broker manager has the authority to rent properties, to make loans, to liquidate debts in his master's name. He's usually paid a commission or some kind of processing fee that is applied to each transaction. It was also common knowledge that there were under-the-table bonuses that might be requested, shall we say, at the manager's discretion. But principal and interest had to be declared and it had to be agreed upon by the parties involved. It had to be in writing. The debtor clients expected and accepted that there would be extra under-the-table charges, but they couldn't get too high or otherwise they would complain to the master. 2 more facts need to be made explicit here to understand how this parable works. The first is this. In that place and in that time, it was commonly understood that the rich people and their ancestors had gained their wealth by taking it away from someone else, by either a military conquest, by extortion, by theft, by corruption, or some other dishonesty or injustice. It was a zero-sum economy, which means the more that one person has, the less that everyone else has. Vast amounts of wealth were held by a very few who had captured it by force or theft, or their ancestors had. And they protected it with armies and laws. Therefore, wealth in Jesus' day was synonymous with greed and with unrighteousness. It's no wonder then that the word mammon always carried a negative connotation for Jesus and for his audience. Here's the second thing. This is something about parables. Parables are structured typically to have surprise endings. The ending of the parable is the key to the parable. And the commentary that Jesus adds after the parable, or the instruction that he adds after the parable, highlights what the lesson of the parable is. So knowing this, if we look at the last sentences of this section, we will read these words where Jesus tells us what the parable sums up. He says, "No servant can serve two masters. Either he will hate the first and love the second, or conversely be devoted to the second and hate the first. You cannot serve both God and mammon," or money. There is the main lesson of the parable. Notice at the very end that Jesus personifies mammon. In other words, he talks about mammon as if mammon is a person, a someone, who demands obedience or service. And this is precisely what makes mammon so dangerous, so objectionable to Jesus. That mammon can become like a god who displaces the one true God, Jesus' Father in heaven. Jesus makes crystal clear that God and mammon do not share allegiances. No person can be a fan of both, to use a sports analogy. You and I must choose one and only one, either God or money. You put these two facts together, riches and wealth are gained by dishonesty in this world of the Bible, and no one can serve both God and money, or mammon. Therefore, we have to conclude that neither the rich master nor his manager can be role models for us, because each one is clearly motivated by and controlled by money. We're told in the very first sentence of the parable that the manager has been credibly accused of scattering or squandering his master's possessions. It's exactly the same word that's used in the previous chapter, the story of the prodigal son. It talks about the prodigal son squandering his money in a faraway country. It's the same word here. The manager has squandered his master's wealth, which we can assume means that he has lived wrongly off the assets that are supposed to be his to manage for his master. In other words, he's stealing. The master calls him in and fires him on the spot. You're done. You're finished. Get out. But this manager is a schemer. He knows that now he'll be branded as a thief in the community. No one will hire him for their management properties. He's too weak to be a laborer, and he's too proud to beg. He needs friends to mooch off of. How about his master's clients? Maybe he can buy their friendship. After all, in his world, money talks. So, one at a time, he secretly calls in each one of his former employers' clients, They don't know yet that he's no longer the manager, that he's been fired. And so he has no authority now to do anything with these accounts. But he doesn't tell them that. Just the opposite. He pretends that he's still in charge of the accounts. And he promptly tells each one to change the account sheet and give themselves a large discount on their debt. Oh, they're happy to do that. Wow, sure. Probably thinking that this little conspiracy against the master is just what he deserves, since he got all this wealth dishonestly anyway. I'll just get a little bit of it back. All of Jesus' listeners now expect that the fired manager is going to get slammed by his former employer for what he's just done, because he had no authority to do what he did, and the master is the one who absorbs the financial loss. But surprise, surprise, instead of prosecution, he gets applause. The rich man, his former boss, commends his shrewd business scheme. He's in a position now, he can't reject the doctored books without dishonoring himself or provoking a rebellion. And his fire manager has bought himself some friends using his former boss's own money. Wow! He couldn't have done it better himself. The rich man simply admires his former manager's craftiness with money. And here I want to recruit a Bible that you don't hear from very often. It's a paraphrase. It's called the Living Bible, because it actually renders this verse in a way that you catch the nuance of what is going on. The Living Bible says, "The rich man had to admire the rascal for being so shrewd." The rich man had to admire the rascal for being so shrewd. The next verses are Jesus' commentary on the parable. And this is where things get confusing, because he seems to be commending the manager as a role model to his disciples. All of the English translations that I looked at least 10 of them, are like this one I'm about to read from the New International Version. They read something like this. Jesus speaking. "For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. I tell you," Jesus says, "use mammon," worldly wealth, "to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings." Is Jesus really telling us to use our money to buy friends? And that when our money is gone, we will inherit eternal homes in heaven? But think about the previous parable. The one right before this is the parable of the prodigal son. And remember, he takes a whole pile of money out, and he buys a lot of friends because he gives them parties and everything they want. And what happens to his friends when his money is gone? The so-called friends are gone too, right? He's all alone. No surprise there. Can money buy friendship? Not true friends. True friendship, devotion, loyalty, love, forgiveness, patience, cannot serve or be served by money. When Jesus says, the people of this world, the people of this age, of this generation, are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light, he's identifying two different groups of people, right? They're distinguished because they have different sets of values. The people of the world, the people of this age, the people of this generation, refers to everybody in this parable. The rich man, his manager, and all the debtors, who conspire with the manager to fix the books. They are all serving mammon, money, riches, wealth. They are all giving first priority to securing a financial benefit for themselves. On different scales, to be sure, but they are all operating under the rules of the same system. Like he said, the game of Monopoly. What are the rules? You get on a property with a house, you pay rent. You get on a property with 2 houses, you pay more. A hotel is even more. In 2 or 3 hotels, maybe you're bankrupt now. That's the rule. That's the system. In this world, the system of profit and loss. And let's be honest, in this world, dishonesty is often rewarded, right? Financially speaking, war, brute force, extortion, blackmail, theft, cooked books, threats of violence or pain. These are all strategies of this world that do, in fact, bring some people massive financial wealth. Yesterday they did, today they will, and tomorrow they will too. But dishonesty is excluded from the behaviors of the people of the light, the servants of God, the followers of Jesus. The love of mammon, of money, and the practice of dishonesty or unrighteousness, they are so tightly connected that Jesus says you can't separate them. Mammon and God are 2 different realms with 2 different value systems and rules of engagement. Therefore, Jesus can't possibly be recommending that his disciples use their money like the dishonest manager to buy friends, much less to gain heavenly homes. Therefore, I'm going to propose the words in verse 9 that are so confusing, where Jesus says, use your money to buy your friends, can only be understood as ironic. That is, they mean the opposite of what they say. The Living Bible has a great paraphrase, the only one, of this verse that makes the irony clear. Hang with me, here's the difference. If I take a terribly difficult test and I walk out of it and tell my friends, well, that was easy, that's an ironic statement. I didn't mean literally it was easy. I meant just the opposite. It was very hard. If I sit out in the sun and I get really hot and I say to someone, oh, what a cool, relaxing, refreshing day it is, that's an ironic statement. You know that I don't mean that. I mean just the opposite, right? That's irony. So most English translations of Luke 16:9 read like this. They're very literal. It's what I read before. Jesus says, I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous mammon or money, so that when it fails, they may receive you into the eternal habitations. But the Living Bible offers a paraphrase that demonstrates the ironic nature of the statement, that it means its opposite. Here's how it reads. Jesus says, shall I tell you to act that way? To buy friendship through cheating? Will this ensure your entry into an everlasting home in heaven? No. The implied, unspoken answer to those 2 questions is no. Don't do that. Here's what the Living Bible continues, and the next verses make much more sense. For unless you are honest in small matters, you won't be honest in large ones. If you cheat even a little, you won't be honest with the greater responsibilities. And if you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven? And if you're not faithful with other people's money, that's a reference to the dishonest manager, If you're not faithful with other people's money, why should you be entrusted with money of your own? For neither you nor anyone else can serve two masters. You cannot serve both God and money. Here's the bottom line. Money is a terrible master. A terrible master. Whether one has a lot of it, very little, or something in between, doesn't matter. Friends bought with money are not true friends. They love money more than they love you. They will follow the money, not you. Money is a necessary evil in this world. Use it for doing good, but do not love it. Money is of very temporary and relatively minor importance compared to the things of God, which are monumental and everlasting. Be clear about what is little and what is big. Money is little, God is big. Would you join me in prayer? Heavenly Father, we struggle. We live in a world of money. We can't help it. We were born into it. It's going to be this way when we leave it. The Bible knows that, talks about money quite a lot, warning us not to get entrapped by it, but we have to interact with it, and it can be useful. We can do lots of good things with money, and we should. But money cannot control, should not control how we live, what we do, how we think, how we behave. And help us, oh God, because it's ever tempting to try to use its power, and we don't want to get caught in it. Help us, Lord, to find that balance of relationship where money becomes a useful tool, but it's not that important. Not really. Not in the big scheme of things, as Jesus tells us. We only want to serve you. May it be so. In his name we